Your mother bought a new hat every single year. Every Easter without exception, she went to the department store. She sat in a chair in front of a mirror. A woman handed her hats one at a time. She tried each one, turned her head left, then right, then left again. She chose one. She brought it home and put it on the shelf in her closet, and she did not touch it again until Easter morning. On that morning, she put it on, she looked in the mirror, and she smiled in a way she did not smile on any other day of the year. That was Easter Sunday, and it is gone. Before we dive in, hit subscribe and drop a comment letting us know where you are watching from. You have to understand what Easter Sunday was before you can understand what we lost. It was not a day. It was the end of something and the beginning of something else, and the biggest single Sunday of the entire year. 40 days. Your mother had been giving something up. No chocolate, no cake, no sugar in her coffee. Your father gave up beer. Your sister gave up candy. You tried to give up fighting with your brother, and you made it 11 days before he broke your model airplane, and the deal was off. That was Lent. 40 days of sacrifice that started on Ash Wednesday when you came home from church with a black smudge on your forehead and ended on Easter Sunday when everything you had denied yourself for 6 weeks came rushing back in one glorious morning. The first piece of chocolate after 40 days tasted like nothing you had ever eaten before. Not because the chocolate was different, because you were different. You had waited, you had earned it, and that waiting is what made Easter morning feel like the doors of the world had been thrown open. It started weeks before the day itself. Your mother took you shopping for new clothes. This was not optional. This was not a suggestion. In America in the 1950s and the 1960s, there was a belief that went back 500 years to England that said if you did not wear new clothes on Easter Sunday, you would have bad luck for the entire year. Your mother did not necessarily believe in superstitions, but she was not about to test that one. So you went to the department store and you tried on dresses, or you tried on a little suit with a clip-on tie. Your mother stood behind you and pulled the fabric and turned you around and said, "Stand up straight." The woman helping you brought another size, and your mother said, "That is the one." You carried it home in a bag, and it hung in your closet for 2 weeks, and you were not allowed to wear it. Not to school, not to play, not anywhere. Those clothes existed for one purpose and one purpose only, and that purpose was Easter Sunday morning. And the shoes, white patent leather for the girls, shiny and stiff, and they hurt your feet for the first hour, but you did not care because they were new and they were white and they caught the light when you walked. The boys got new dress shoes that their fathers had to break in by wearing them around the house the night before because nobody wanted a kid limping through church. And the gloves, white gloves for your mother, white gloves for your grandmother, white gloves for you if you were a girl old enough to wear them, and a purse. A small white purse that held nothing but a handkerchief and maybe a nickel for the collection plate. And a corsage. Your father bought your mother a corsage and she pinned it to her dress. It had a ribbon and a small flower and it smelled sweet. And it meant that today was not an ordinary Sunday. Today was Easter. And on that morning you woke up and the house smelled different. Your mother was already up. She had been up since before dawn because there was a basket to assemble and a dinner to start and hair to curl and a house to prepare for company. You came downstairs and there it was, the Easter basket, sitting on the table or hidden behind the couch or tucked next to your chair at the breakfast table. Green cellophane grass spilling over the sides, jelly beans in every color, a chocolate egg wrapped in foil, marshmallow Peeps in a row, yellow chicks with black dot eyes staring up at you, and in the middle of it all, standing tall and wrapped in purple foil, was the chocolate bunny. You picked it up. It felt light. too light, and you bit into it, and there was nothing inside, hollow. A thin shell of chocolate and air, and you looked at your brother and he had the same expression on his face because his was hollow too, and that was the first time in your life you learned that something could look perfect on the outside and be empty on the inside, and you ate the ears anyway because chocolate is chocolate, and you were 6 years old and Lent was over. Then your mother called you upstairs and the real ritual began. She sat you down and she did your hair. If you were a girl, she put it in curls or braids or pinned it with a bow that matched your dress. If you were a boy, she wet your hair and combed it flat with a part so straight it looked like it had been drawn with a ruler, and your father put a dab of Brill cream on his palm and smoothed it over your head and said, "Now do not touch it." You put on your new clothes, the dress that had been hanging in the closet for 2 weeks, the shoes that were still stiff, the gloves, the little purse. Your mother adjusted your collar, your father tied his tie, your grandmother arrived in a car that smelled like perfume and peppermints, and she kissed you and said, "Look how big you have gotten," and she was wearing a hat too, because every woman wore a hat on Easter, and if you showed up at church without one, people noticed and they talked, and your grandmother was not about to give them anything to talk about. You walked into that church, and it did not look like the church you went to every other Sunday. The altar was covered in white lilies, banks of them. The smell of those lilies filled the entire building and mixed with the perfume of 100 women in new dresses, and the wood polish on the pews, and the old paper of the hymnals, and that combination of smells, lilies and perfume and wood and paper and candle wax, that was Easter. The organ played, and it was louder than usual because the organist knew that today the church was full. Every pew, every seat. People standing in the back who had not been to church since Christmas and would not come again until next Christmas, but today they were here because it was Easter, and Easter was the one Sunday you did not skip. The choir sang, and the hymns were the ones you knew by heart, and your mother sang beside you, and she had a good voice, and she only sang in church. You leaned against her arm, and you could feel the vibration of her voice through her sleeve, and the lilies smelled so strong they made your eyes water. The sun came through the stained glass window and threw colored light across the floor and across your new white shoes. You sat there in that colored light in your new dress next to your mother who was singing, and you did not understand the sermon, but you understood that this moment was important because everyone you loved was in this room, and everyone was dressed in their best, and everyone was together. After the service, you went outside and the sunlight hit you. Your father squinted, and your mother put her hand on her hat because the wind was blowing. Someone said, "Let us get a picture," and the whole family gathered on the steps of the church. Your father stood in the back because he was tall. Your mother stood in the middle holding your little brother. Your grandmother stood to the side with her purse over her arm, and you stood in the front in your new dress and your new shoes and your white gloves. Someone held a camera and said, "Smile," and you smiled, and that photograph was taken, and it is in a box somewhere in your house right now. Everyone in that photograph is wearing their best clothes, and everyone is squinting into the sun, and the church is behind them, and the year is 1962. Some of the people in that photograph are gone now, and the church might be gone too, but the photograph is still there, and every Easter you think about it, and you do not take it out of the box because you do not need to. You can see it with your eyes closed. In New York City, they did not just go to church, they went to the parade. The Easter parade on Fifth Avenue. After the services let out at St. Patrick's Cathedral, St. Thomas, and Trinity Episcopal, the sidewalks filled with people in their finest clothes walking slowly up the avenue, showing what they had bought, what they had made, and what they were wearing. Women wore hats so elaborate they looked like gardens. Men wore suits so pressed they could stand on their own. Children in matching outfits held their parents' hands. In 1947, more than 1 million people walked that parade. 1 million. The United States government was so proud of that image of American prosperity that the Voice of America broadcast it by radio to the Soviet Union to show them what freedom looked like. Irving Berlin had written a song about it 14 years earlier, and Judy Garland had sung it in a movie, and by the 1950s, the Easter parade was as famous as Christmas in Times Square. It was the day America showed itself to the world and said, "Look at us, look at what we built. Look at how our people dress and walk and carry themselves on a Sunday in spring." And by 2008, 30,000 people showed up. 30,000. From 1 million to 30,000 in 60 years. The avenue is still there. The churches are still there. But the parade that once stopped traffic for 10 blocks and made designers sit on the curb sketching dresses is a costume party now, and the hats are jokes, and the purpose is gone. And after church or after the parade, you went to your grandmother's house and the table was already set. The good china, the cloth napkins, the table that only came out of the closet for Thanksgiving and Christmas and Easter. The ham was in the oven and it had been in since morning, and the house smelled like cloves and brown sugar and something sweet that you would spend the rest of your life trying to find in other kitchens and never quite succeeding. Deviled eggs on a plate in the center of the table, potato salad in a bowl your grandmother had owned since before you were born, green beans, sweet potatoes with marshmallows on top that had been browned under the broiler until they were golden, and you burned the roof of your mouth every year because you could not wait for them to cool. Rolls that your grandmother had made from scratch because she did not buy rolls. She made them, and she had been making them since 4 o'clock that morning. The adults sat in the dining room, the children sat at a card table in the kitchen or on the porch if the weather was warm enough. You ate with your cousins, and you kicked each other under the table, and you ate too fast, and your aunt told you to slow down, and you did not slow down. Because the sooner you finished, the sooner you could go outside for the EGG hunt and the egg hunt. Your grandfather had hidden them, a dozen hard-boiled eggs that you and your mother had dyed the night before with those little tablets that fizzed in cups of vinegar and turned the water pink and blue and green and yellow, and your fingers were stained for 2 days afterward. The eggs were in the garden and behind the bushes. One was always in the rain gutter, and one was always in the mailbox. You ran across the grass in your new shoes that were getting dirty now, but nobody cared, because it was Easter afternoon, and the ham was gone, and the deviled eggs were gone, and the adults were sitting in the living room talking, and the children were outside screaming, and the sun was warm, and the lilies from church were still in your nose, and you found an egg behind the rose bush and you held it up and your mother clapped. That was Easter Sunday in America. Not a holiday, a day. A whole day built on 40 days of waiting and 6 decades of tradition and 5 centuries of superstition that said you had better wear something new or the year would go badly for you. A day when every woman in your family wore a hat, and every man wore a tie, and every child wore shoes that hurt, and nobody complained because this was the day the world started over. The day after the longest winter, the day the flowers came back, the day your mother looked in the mirror and smiled at the woman looking back at her because that woman was wearing a new hat and new gloves and a corsage her husband had bought her, and she was beautiful and she knew it. For one Sunday, out of 52, she allowed herself to feel it. The hats stopped first. In 1973, the hat industry declared the Easter bonnet obsolete. Women had been buying hats for Easter Sunday since the Middle Ages, and in 1 decade they stopped. The gloves went next. then the new clothes, then the church. In the 1950s, 49% of Americans went to church every single week. By the 2020s, that number was 30% and falling. Church membership dropped below 50% for the first time in American history in 2020. The pews that were full on Easter Sunday in 1962 have empty seats now. The Lilies are still there, the hymns are still there, but the room is not full, and the woman in the hat is not there because the woman in the hat stopped coming, and then she stopped buying the hat, and then she stopped going to the department store to try them on. The chair in front of the mirror is empty, and the woman who used to hand her hats one at a time does not work there anymore because the department store closed. And your grandmother's house? That table is not set anymore. The good china is in a box in someone's garage. The ham recipe is on a card in a drawer that nobody opens. The deviled eggs are a memory. The card table where the children sat is folded up in a closet, and the children who sat at it are grandparents themselves now, and they do not set up a card table at Easter because their children live in other states, and the family does not gather the way it used to gather. The egg hunt does not happen in the garden because there is no garden, and there are no eggs hidden in the rain gutter because there is no grandfather to hide them. But here is what did not disappear. The smell of lilies in a church on a Sunday morning, the sound of your mother's voice singing a hymn you knew by heart, the stiffness of new shoes on a spring morning, the colored light from a stained glass window falling across a wooden pew, the weight of a hollow chocolate bunny in your hand, and the look on your brother's face when he bit into his. The photograph on the steps of the church with everyone squinting into the sun, the taste of your grandmother's ham that you have never been able to make taste the same no matter how many times you have tried. The woman in the hat, the woman who stood in front of the mirror on Easter morning and smiled, the woman who pinned a corsage to her dress and took your hand and walked you into a church full of lilies and sang beside you and drove you to your grandmother's house and watched you run across the grass in shoes that were already dirty, looking for eggs that your grandfather had hidden in the same places he hid them every year. That woman, that hat, that smile, that is what Easter Sunday was. And if you remember it, you do not need anyone to explain what we lost. If you remember Easter Sunday the way it used to be, tell me what you remember first, the hat or the shoes or the lilies or the ham. Tell me if your mother bought new gloves every year. Tell me if your grandmother made the rolls from scratch. Tell me about the photograph on the church steps and who was standing next to you and whether they are still here. And if the woman in the hat is gone now, and the table is not set anymore, and the church is half empty on the one Sunday it used to be full, tell me about her. I read every single comment.